Okay, so in this last part, I'm going to take a look at the design principles and colour. So how you can use the design principles, rather how you can use colour to generate the design principles of emphasis, scale and gravity. Okay, so thinking about emphasis is an area of that's highly visual and visible in the design. So it's the part that's going to jump out the most in the design. Now I think in this design on the left, that's going to be this star area where the complementary colours have remained fully saturated from the middle to the outer edge there. In contrast over here, the complementary colours get less and less saturated as they go back, so it's only the centre part of the star shape that has emphasis. So here, in both cases, I'm using a high contrast of hue to create emphasis, but here I'm using it to create a larger area of emphasis than I am in this design over here. You can also use high contrastive value or high contrastive saturation to create an area of emphasis in your design. Now, in terms of scale, it's a similar situation. Here, this larger area remains an area of focus because of the use of pure hues, pure complementary hues right next to each other in this entire area. So this area, the area of emphasis here is much larger than it is in this area over here. So you have to keep that in mind as well. How large do you want your focal point to be? In terms of gravity, another thing you need to think about with scale is how you're going to use colours. So for example, in this design here, this pure blue is a larger circle and a brighter hue, so it's coming forward in space more than this one here, which is a lighter hue and smaller, so it's going back in space. So you need to think about how you want to use colour that way too. We talked about this a bit in week 2, where we were looking at colour temperature, and we wanted the parts of the design that were going back in space to be cooler and either lighter or darker depending on our background hue. So also that's another thing you need to keep in mind as well when using scale, because larger shapes are going to advance and smaller shapes are going to recede, unless of course they're layered, and of course it depends on colour temperature. There are so many things to think about. Now, in terms of gravity, you'll find that certain colours will have more gravity than others in the design, and I think there's an interesting employment of gravity when we compare the use of shades here as to the use of light tints here. So darker colours tend to feel heavier than lighter colours, and we can see here how this becomes a focal point because it's got more weight in this particular blend than here. So this lighter hue recedes in space and is not as strong. It's much lighter in gravity and weight than this one over here because of its value. So that's another thing to consider, how heavy and light are the hues that you're working with. And you'll find that darker hues tend to be heavier than lighter hues. Alright, I think that's all I have to say about the design principles and colour.